Record. Okay. You are now being recorded. Okay. So you've got your standard, which is the overarching, what concept that you need to teach. And then the learning target is smaller. It's the lesson size chunk that the students need to learn that day. And then the success criteria is even smaller chunk on how the students know that they have mastered that learning target. So if you notice today, we had today's learning target, which was as kind of a small chunk. This is what we're going to learn today. And then I broke down the learning target for today into this is how you are going to know that you are successful in learning this target for today. So the success criteria is kind of a checklist of how do you know you're going to master this learning target. So success criteria is an explanation and details of the learning target or chunks of learning. And one of you guys said it's kind of an assessment or a checklist or something that the students know in order to master the target. So the relationship is the success criteria is related to the learning target. It's breaking it down a little bit more, breaking down the learning target a little bit more. Ms. Reneska, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking too, it's kind of like, here's how my students, that with the success criteria, here's how my students are going to prove that they've mastered the target. This is what they're going to do so that I know as the teacher, they have got it. So if you guys just think about it like that, that success criteria proves how they have mastered the target. It's your proof.
Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video and this video is going to be the majority of the rest of our time together this morning. And this video is a teacher explaining learning targets and success criteria. And she is going to talk a lot about targets, and she's going to talk about little targets. When she talks about little targets, she's actually referring to success criteria. So when she says little targets, she's talking about success criteria, okay? So just wanted to kind of clarify that. That her terminology when she says little targets is success criteria. All right. So we're going to use our note-taking page. So when she says what are learning targets, you're going to be taking notes on what she says are learning targets. And then when she talks about why use learning targets, you take notes on why she says to use learning targets and so on. All right, so let me move all this stuff out of the way and go to the video.
Mrs. Conley, we can't hear it.
Can't hear it? Okay. Let me see if I can turn up my volume a little bit. Let's see. Don't you love technology?
Mrs. Conley, did you, when you shared your screen, did you click computer audio?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Is that better?
No. Mm-mm.
It's not better?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right, you e-learning teachers, is there a better way to?
Is your volume up on YouTube itself?
Let me check.
Over to the left.
Right next to the play button.
Miss
Next.
Connie, when you hit share screen, there's a little check mark on the bottom left that you have to click in order for us to hear the sound.
On share screen.
So unshare it and then begin sharing again, and there should be a little box that you have to check off on the bottom left.
All right, so I'm going to unshare. And then I'm going to do what?
Share screen. And there should be a little box on the left hand on the bottom.
Oh, share computer sound.
Yes.
Oh, you're so good.
Can be really, really difficult sometimes. But in today's video, I want to share with you one little thing that can take that difficult to easy. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are a new viewer with me, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Bridget Spackman and I am a teacher in Pennsylvania. I taught kindergarten for 4 years in Alabama, and currently I am teaching 4th grade ELA, and next year I'll be teaching a multi-age classroom across multiple subjects, which I am so excited about. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about learning targets and how learning targets can really take difficult teaching, difficult planning, difficult lessons, and make them easy, make them understandable, and make students accountable for their own learning. So this journey began 4 years ago, and I was at a conference and I was learning about learning targets, and I soon found out that after I tried to start implementing them into my classroom, because I thought the idea was phenomenal, I said, this is great. I'm going to start using them in my classroom. And once I started using them in my classroom, guys, I started realizing it takes a little bit more than just posting them up on your wall. There's a little bit more to learning targets than just having them up there and thinking students are reading them, students are using them. So in today's video, I want to share with you 3 things that you can be doing with learning targets to make sure that you're using them to their full potential. So let's really quick go over what exactly are learning targets. So learning targets is a student-friendly sentence that is going to explain to them what is their objective for the lesson. What is it that they're hoping to achieve, and why are they hoping to be able to achieve this? So it's a statement that you put up into in your classroom, and typically it's around the area where you're doing your teaching at that time, and it's in a student-friendly language. So typically you've seen them as I can statements, and these are the statements that I use in my classroom. What's important to know about learning targets is that learning targets are not the here's what you're going to do today. I am going to make a poster about an ecosystem. That's not a learning target. You want that learning target to be based on either knowledge, skill, or reasoning. Those are the types of targets that is going to make your students successful. It's based on the standard that you're teaching, the unit that you're teaching, or the soft skill that you're wanting to accomplish. So when you're creating these learning targets, it can incorporate 2 different things. It can incorporate hard skills, which those hard skills are the things that we're trying to teach them. The hard skills are the standards that we're wanting to teach on a day-to-day basis. But it's also important to remember that we should also be incorporating some of those soft skills to students. And those soft skills are things that we feel like they need to have in order to become successful citizens. So soft skills, an example of it is organizing. Maybe they're working on organizing information. Maybe they're working on organizing their desk. It could be things as simple as that. Maybe it's the fact that you want them to have eye contact, to be able to give that handshake, to be able to carry on a conversation, to ask questions. Those types of things are things that we as just people are skills that we've needed to develop in order to be successful later on in life. So why use these learning targets? Why should we use them? Well,
Okay, before we go on, so let's kind of talk about what are learning targets. What does she talk about in teacher language? What are the learning targets?
The objective for the student.
What for the student?
The objective of the lesson for the student.
Okay, the objective for the lesson for the student. Something else that she said. What else?
Student friendly.
Student friendly.
The concept that you need to teach.
The concept you need to teach.
They're based on the standards.
And they're based on the standard.
And you can incorporate both hard and soft skills.
And you can incorporate hard or soft skills. There was one other thing she said.
Based on knowledge, skills, and reasoning.
Based on knowledge, skills, and reasoning.
It also explains why they need to learn what they're learning.
Okay, exactly. Okay, and then now she's going to talk about why we need to use the learning targets. Okay, here we go.
It's really simple, actually. We use them because it helps us as a teacher identify exactly where we want to make sure that we're targeting our information. What is it that we are specifically trying to teach to our students? And then it also helps our students understand, oh, hey, this is what I'm going to do today. And here's how I'm going to prove that I know this information by the end of class today. So let's talk about how exactly we can implement them. And then I'm going to give you some examples of places that you can put them into the classroom and talk to you a little bit about how I use them personally in my own classroom. So tip 1, make sure.
Okay, so why do we need to use them?
So students know what they're going to do today.
Exactly. So students understand what they're going to be learning. Okay. And then it also
helps me as a teacher understand what I will be teaching.
Exactly. So really, it keeps us focused. It keeps us focused on what we're going to be teaching, and it helps the students know what they're going to be learning. Okay. And then the other part of the students is it helps them prove what they're learning, which is the success criteria part. All right. Okay. So tip number 1. And remember, a little target is the same as success criteria. So that's that blank there. A little target is the same as success criteria. So whenever she's referring to the little targets, she think of a success criteria.
That you're keeping these very small, precise, and strategic. Don't think broad lesson. So let's say at the very, very beginning of the year, you're like, okay, I'm going to start teaching my kids all about summarizing. So we're going to start working on summarizing. Well, we know as good teachers that summarizing incorporates a ton of different skills. It's not just one little thing. You're not going to start a lesson and say, all right, guys, we're going to start to summarize today. That's not how it starts. In the beginning, you want to start talking about the characters, the elements of plot, all of the little things that start to kind of lead up to summarizing. So summarizing is going to be that very big overarching target. And underneath that big target, which is your umbrella, under that big target of summarizing, you're going to have smaller targets. And those smaller targets are your daily targets. And those are the targets that you're going to be using during your lessons. So think of, when you're starting to build some of these, what is the big thing that I want my students to accomplish? And typically this will come directly from a standard. Now, by no means am I saying take out your standard, write your standard on a piece of paper and post it up on your board. Don't do that. Your students aren't going to understand that. Half the time, we as teachers don't even understand that. And we have to start kind of processing the information that they're giving us from the state. So you're taking this standard. You're thinking, okay, well, what is it that I want my students to accomplish from this standard? That's your big umbrella target. From there, you're thinking, okay, well, what are the different things that my students have to be able to accomplish in order to reach this bigger target, which is your standard? Just put friendly terms. So once you start coming up with some of those are your daily targets, and those are the things that you're wanting students to accomplish. So let's say, for instance, that very first time I start introducing summarizing to them, I say, guys, we're going to start working on summarizing. Now, this is a really big target for us. This is going to be something that's going to take us some time to get to, but we're going to start learning some skills and some strategies in order to be able to get to this big target, to get to this big overarching goal that we're wanting to achieve. And once we get to that point, then you can go ahead and start showing them what are some of those smaller targets. So on the first day, you may say, all right, guys, so before we start getting into, this big summarizing, we need to start learning about other things. One of the first things that we have to look at is the beginning of the story. At the very beginning of the story, the author wants to give you information to kind of give you the background. They don't just jump you right into the story because you wouldn't know what's going on as a reader. You're going to have lots of questions as a reader. So that a lot of times will set up the scene for you. They'll give you the setting, they'll give you the characters, and then they'll give you some kind of information about those characters. So let's practice through that today, and let's see if we can identify some of those characters and settings. So let's look at our target. Our target says I can identify the character, setting, and background information of a text. Now, that's probably a ton of stuff to do in one day. I may end up just saying characters and setting and then come to background information the very next day. It all depends on your students, and it depends on the group of students too, because even in this big classroom, you may have smaller groups of students that can have different abilities and be able to go and take it a little bit further than some. And that's okay. So they understand what exactly that they're doing, and you're introducing the lesson with it. And then before you leave that lesson, guys, this is important. Before you actually leave that lesson, you need to go back to that learning target. If you say, all right, guys, real quick before you leave, I just want to revisit our target really fast. Can somebody read that for me? And then have someone read it and say, guys, what did we do today in order to be able to say that we are able to identify the characters and setting? What were some of the strategies that we used today to help us achieve this target? And then have them have that discussion. Do it as an exit ticket. There's lots of a way of assessing that we can come back to later in another video and talk about the ways that you can check to make sure that students are understanding those learning targets. So that's the very first thing, breaking down your standards and making sure that you're using them at the beginning of the lesson and then also at the end of the lesson, which is where it's going to be the most powerful. Tip number 2, which is probably one of my favorite tips, but have kids take ownership in these learning targets. Don't just put it up there, and don't be the person who is in sole responsibility of reading this learning target. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be that teacher that is constantly the one that's speaking, because if you're constantly the one that's speaking, you're thinking for your students. You need to give your students the opportunity to be able to articulate.
Okay, so what is tip number 1?
Have smaller targets.
Make
Okay.
them small and precise and break them down.
The standard to make them smaller daily.
In friendly terms.
Yes.
Okay, so when you're planning, you need to take your standard, and then you need to create your target in student-friendly terms, and then make those smaller targets. And what are you asking yourself whenever you're creating this?
Well, you need to know the bigger picture first, the standard,
Right.
understand the standard and how to break it up to make them work on it by different daily, so they can incorporate one by one, scaffold it and redo it and learn it.
I was trying to, but didn't know what to do. Okay.
I think I have to join again. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Are you guys in a breakout room right now?
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Mine says join.
We
I
were asked to
didn't
join a breakout room, but we lost the video when we do.
Okay. All right. I was playing with the breakout room, so let me close them.
Can you back the video up a little bit too, Mrs. Conley?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
I escaped the breakout room.
You escaped.
Yeah, I got out of the breakout room just in time.
All right, now we're in the main session.
What, did we miss anything?
Probably.
Whoops.
It's the breakout room's closing in 20 seconds. It's going to be closing.
Did we miss tip 2?
No,
No.
no.
So I'm confused. Before everyone gets back in, is she saying not to post the actual standard in the classroom?
No.
I heard that.
Because that's what I thought I heard her say. Just post, like, break it down simpler for them.
I agree. And she also said, I've always had my students copy the standard into their reading notebook because I was recommended to do that. So now I'm confused also. Are we to display it and are the students to copy it?
All right. Is everybody back?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I confused you guys. I was trying to play with the breakout rooms while she was talking, and I kind of sent you into the breakout rooms early while she was talking. So I apologize for that.
No worries.
So anyway, so
trouble.
yeah, I was sending you out. Yeah.
It's Conley. Now you know how the e-learning teachers feel.
Yes.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so I apologize for that. I was playing with it while talking, and it was like, and it sent you there early. But anyway, okay, so a couple of you guys had some questions. So the question was, is she saying don't post the targets?
The standards, not the targets,
don't
the
post
standards.
the standard. She's saying don't post the standard because the kids aren't going to understand the standard. But yes, you do need to post the target in kid-friendly terms. And the success criteria, because the kids need to know how they will be successful at the end of the lesson, or the little targets, which she'll be talking a little bit more about the little targets. And I'm going to back up the video a little bit so that you'll kind of get the part that you might have missed when I sent you to your breakout rooms, because the video, some of you missed the video when I sent you to the breakout rooms. So yes. The other part of the question that you asked is some of you guys are having your kids copy the target in a notebook. Yes and no. What we're seeing in some of your classrooms is you're taking 20 minutes to have the kids copy that target in their notebooks. That's way too long. If your kids are taking that much time to copy a learning target in a notebook, that's just taking too much instructional time to do that. Think about a way to better spend your time. So you may want to have the target already typed on a little slip of paper and just have them glue it in the notebook. And then we're going to talk in a little bit about ways for them to understand that target, where they might want to circle key words in that learning target, and then write other words for those key words. What does it mean to explain? What does it mean? What do characters mean? Things like that. So think about how much time you're taking to go over that learning target and that success criteria. We don't want to take 20 to 30 minutes of our instructional time to do those types of things. Okay? Other thoughts, questions?
Can I just confirm then that we are not expected to have the standard posted in the classroom?
You are expected to have the learning target.
And okay, but not but not the standard, because that I was told last year to have the learning standard up, and it was recommended to me to have my students copy the standard, not the target, but the standard.
Not the standard.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
It's never been told to have the standard.
Okay.
The target.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I backed up the video a little bit, and so she's going to finish up tip number 1 and then go into tip number 2.
What it is that they're thinking and how are they processing the information that's on their learning target. So in the beginning, you may even have students read it. Typically, when I start my lessons, I'll tell my students, I want you to read the board. And they've gotten into the habit now where they come and sit down during my small group time. They'll read the board because it'll have the target up at the top, so they'll know exactly what they're going to be doing. And then it also has some things that I want them to do while I'm waiting for everybody to come to group. So this is something that they're already kind of used to. And your students can get used to it too once you've kind of gotten into that practice of it. So have them read it. And typically I'll say, hey guys, I want you to look at our learning target really quick. Just read it silently to your head. Okay, now let's read it together, and we'll all read it together. And I say, I want you to turn and talk with a partner. I want you guys to discuss what are the things that we're doing? What are we doing it with? What are we doing and what are we doing it with? Those are the 2 things that I will ask my students. And typically they'll talk and they'll identify the verb and they'll identify what is it that we're working with today. Is it an informational text? Is it a fictional text? Is it a passage? Are we looking at solely characters? What is it that we're specifically looking for? And when I have them do that, that's getting them talking about what is exactly that we're going to be focused on our lesson today. It's already getting their brains thinking about what we're going to be doing. And that's important, really important. So once we do that, then I'll have them come back and then they'll get the opportunity to share. But here's where it's key, is that I don't stop at the beginning of the lesson. Throughout that entire lesson, I'll say, so-and-so, can you tell me how this strategy is working for this target? Can you explain to me why I would give you this strategy in order to help you achieve this target goal that we have? And have them talk about it and have them process it and share some of their thinking and their ideas, because that's them processing that information into their brain, which is going to stick a little bit better than you being the sole person of the information and sharing it out. Give them the opportunity to really take ownership of some of those targets. And later on, as you've kind of gotten better and better and better, because it will take time to really make sure that you as a teacher are using them the way that you should be using them versus just leaving them posted on the wall, but you're using them the way that you should be using them. And then you can start giving them a little bit more with that. And typically this will come along with goal setting and other things that you can do as far as giving them the responsibility. So that's when you have that opportunity to be able to give students maybe some goal setting, giving them some certain tasks, maps, things to show them that, hey, here is what you're working on. Here are the things that you need to be doing in order to show me that you can achieve this goal, and give the responsibility to them. Why are we always the one that was responsible for their learning? We need to put students responsible for their own learning as well and put them in the driver's seat. The last tip that I have for you to kind of get you.
Okay, so most of that was actually tip number 2. I didn't back it up far enough, but so what are some things that she talked about in tip number 2?
Taking ownership.
Okay, students' ownership of what?
Maybe reading the target, for them to be able to read the target and what they're going to be learning throughout the day in the lesson.
Okay, so, and she talked about how when they come in, the first thing they do is they read that target, and they are responsible for knowing that target. Okay, so what else?
She asked 2 questions when after the students read it. What are we doing and what are we doing with it? So again, that's that ownership piece for the kids.
Okay, and I liked that. What are we doing and what are we doing with it? So that's that ownership piece. You're right. So the kids get used to that. What are we doing and what are we doing with it? Okay.
And why are we using this particular strategy?
Yeah, exactly. Why are we using this particular strategy? So the students are taking that ownership of, You know, we're not just doing this activity to do it and to fill time. We're doing this for a purpose. Okay.
Students are discussing the targets with each other, so they're processing the information.
Exactly. So, and they're, yeah, and that's hard to do in COVID days, but they can still do some of that pair share. And there's one other point that she made.
She said that the target is revisited multiple times at the beginning, throughout the lesson, and again at the end. And it's not the teacher saying it, it's the students that are reiterating the information.
Exactly. I was hoping that somebody would catch on to that it's constantly revisited throughout the lesson, and the students are revisiting it, not the teacher. Okay, awesome. And the other thing was there's goal setting related to the target. So perfect. Okay, now she's going to go on to tip number 3.
Started with using learning targets, the way that they're meant to be used in the classroom is to make sure that you're assessing those learning targets. Because without going back and checking to make sure that students are actually understanding what it is that they're supposed to be doing, then what's the purpose of us doing it? So we need to make sure that we're assessing them. And this can be simple, guys. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Typically, I have made like a checklist. And on this checklist, I've kind of just checked students off based upon the learning targets that I have at the very top of the page. And I've just checked them off to see if they've understood it. It could be as simple as listening to a conversation and checking it off and making sure that they got it. Are you giving them just an exit ticket? And this is simple. It doesn't have to be fancy. Like, literally, I will have like index cards and say, I want you to tell me, how is it that you've achieved this target at the end of this lesson? What are some things that you're going to do in order to be able to say that you can do this? And have them quickly do it. Giving them some type of an assignment that they have to go back. And then later on, come back the next day and show that they can understand that learning target. And then again, you could just check them off. But we need to make sure that we're actually assessing those learning targets and we're making sure that students are understanding things. Because here's the beauty, guys, is once a student gets that learning target, we don't need to keep them there. We don't need to hold a student back just because we're waiting for other students to figure out and learn it. So we don't want to keep them there. We want to move them along. And for those students who are still having some of that difficulty, that's when you have that opportunity to be able to pull them maybe in a flex grouping or even during an individual conference and say, hey, I noticed that on this target, you're having some difficulty understanding. So let's go back through and let's kind of discuss some of these things and some of the strategies that I've showed you already. And I want you to tell me, what is it that you understand? What is it that you get? Explain everything to me. And then I'm going to see where it is that you're kind of having that disconnect. And I'm going to help you through that. So make sure that you're assessing them. So really quick, before I leave you, I want to talk to you about really quick, some do's and don'ts.
Okay, so what's tip number 3?
Assessing.
Assessing.
Assessing the learning targets.
Okay, and what are some ways that she talked about doing that?
Checklist. Do a checklist.
Exit ticket.
Exit ticket.
Conversation.
Listening to conversation.
Listening to conversations.
Pull in small
Pull
groups
back.
if you're meeting, so if they have any trouble, you can pull them aside and have a chat with them. Let them
Okay.
talk to you, and then you will see what they need and just fill in the blanks for them.
Okay, and so pulling in those small groups and having those flex groups after you get the information, and then, you know, and having those conversations. What do you get? What do you not get? So making sure you do something with that information once you know whether they've got it or they don't have it. And a lot of you did a great job last year of doing this and assessing where they're at. I saw some teachers, you know, put on their smart board the smiley faces and had the kids do some self-assessing last year. Some of you do thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways at the end, whether they are getting the target or not. I saw a lot of great things last year, but this year I'm not seeing it as much. So I just don't want you forgetting about those great strategies. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you know, if you really are understanding the target, give me a 5. If you're not understanding, give me a 1. But make sure you hold up the right finger. If you are not getting it, if you halfway get it, give me a 3, that kind of thing. So we need to have the kids do more self-assessing as well. So what kinds of things are rolling around in your head as far as assessment goes?
It should be quick.
Yes, it should be quick. Shouldn't take too much time. And even in e-learning, you guys can do this pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts rolling around in your head?
I like the idea of her mentioning that they can do it almost at their own pace. So the kids who are getting it don't have to wait for the other kids to catch up, which would help, move our higher kids along. But also it would help us even create more differentiated instruction with the various students we do have. And I'm thinking, like, I've seen it before, a checklist on like the desk with the success criteria and whatnot on there so they can check it off. Obviously, if they say they can do it, they have to be able to prove they can do it. But there's a myriad of ways to check that. But I like the idea. It also encourages their taking ownership of it.
I agree. And so a couple points that you just made is the students who do get it do need to be moved along, and we do need to challenge them to move on to something else. And I like that idea of the checklist where, especially in the upper grades, have them be able to check off those success criteria as they're learning it. But again, like you just said, they need to be able to prove that they have learned it. And then in a little bit, I'm going to show you some ideas on how to do that. All right, the last section of the video is do's and don'ts.
With learning targets. I touched on this a little bit at the very beginning, but this is learning targets versus doing targets. You don't want it to be something that they're doing. Don't focus it on what are the students doing. Focus it on what is it that the students are learning. Are they learning to identify the extrinsic characteristics? Are they learning to compare two authors' texts? What is it that they are learning versus doing? Don't confuse it with a doing task. If you're going through and starting to tell me, oh, they're going to complete a poster, they're going to do an iMovie, they're going to go and complete a writing assignment, it's not a doing task. You want to make sure that you're sticking to strictly learning tasks. The next one, again, I touched on this just a little bit, but learning targets are too complex. Be careful and don't add too much into it. Guys, the purpose of these learning targets is to make sure that your teaching is very strategic and small, and you're focusing on something little versus trying to give them so much information. Think about when you go to a professional development and you're sitting down in this professional development and they're giving you things and things and things and things. At the end of the day, when you leave, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so much information. I don't think I even remember half of the stuff that the person was saying. This is how your students are feeling. So remember that whenever you are planning out your lesson and you are creating some of those learning targets, you're wanting it to be very small and precise and strategic. When you do that something small, have them go out and practice that something small and come back and show that they've understood that skill. And then what's really nice is when you've created this big, huge umbrella and you've looked at all these little bitty small targets, you can identify where is the disconnect that a student is having. That's the beauty of using these learning targets, is being able to identify, okay, where is it exactly that my student is kind of losing this information? Why are they not understanding it? Well, you can start pulling some of those learning targets and really figuring out, oh, okay, this is where it is. So this is specifically what it is that I need to be teaching them, because they get everything else. But this is the one little thing that they're not getting. So keeping it small, making sure that you're not going too complex. I know a lot of the times we want to just throw information at them, but guys, less is more sometimes. We really need to go back and make sure that we're giving them little bits of information as we go, giving them opportunity to practice those little bits of information, and then making sure that we are assessing it to see if they truly understand it. Another common challenge is that learning targets are not used on a daily basis. Guys, it's going to be difficult. Like I told you at the very beginning of the video, I struggled a little bit too, because I kind of thought that, oh, I was going to put it up on my board and it was just going to start working its little magic. Well, you're the magic. The students are the magic. You need to make sure that you're drawing that attention to that every single time, and you are getting yourself into that habit. Start now, start small, and posting it, making sure that you're reviewing it at the beginning of the lesson, at the end of the lesson, and start kind of working your way up. Guys, it's a habit. It truly is a habit that you have to kind of start putting into yourself. So give yourself the opportunity to now just start building that habit. But when you start using it and you're using it on a regular basis and you're really giving your students the opportunity to discuss it, that is when you're going to start seeing some of the magic happen. Another challenge that a lot of teachers are having with learning targets is that the targets themselves are all lower level knowledge. You want to make sure that you're also incorporating a lot of that higher level thinking. So you're using 3 different types of learning targets. You're using the knowledge, which is your lower level. You're using your skill. And then you're also using reasoning. These 2 are going to be your higher level thinking skills. And those are some of the things that we want to start incorporating. I can share some of those. If you guys really want to know more about learning targets, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. But I can share some of those a little bit later on to kind of help you start thinking about how can you incorporate 3 different levels of targets within your classroom to make sure that you're using some of that higher level thinking. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up to tell me if you've actually gotten something out of it, if you enjoy learning about targets, and if you would like to learn about targets.
Okay, so what are some do's and don'ts?
Don't add too much into it.
Don't put too much into it. Okay, keep it simple.
Make sure it's a learning, not a doing task.
Make sure it's learning, not doing. Okay, what else?
Make sure your teaching is strategic. That's why you're using those learning targets and success criteria to kind of drive your instruction to a strategic level.
Okay.
Don't freak out if you don't get it right the first time as a teacher.
Exactly. You know, teaching is trial and error sometimes. So make sure, you know, don't freak out. Just try, you know, you have to make it a habit. So just keep trying to keep it as a routine. Do it over and over again. How many days does it take to make something a habit?
21.
Like 21?
21.
Okay. I was going to say 40. So, okay. So, you know, you have to do something over and over and over again to make it a habit. Okay. What else?
Use them on a daily basis.
Use them daily. And that's how you do make it a habit. And make it a habit for your students too, not just you. Go ahead.
Beginning and end.
Beginning.
The beginning of the lesson, the end of the lesson.
End of the lesson. And you also need to review it in the middle as well. Okay. All right.
Higher order of thinking also.
Incorporate that higher order thinking. And how do you do that?
You have 3 levels. You have the knowledge, then the skill, and then go to the higher level.
Yep, the reasoning, the higher level. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to get into the practical. We've got a few minutes left. So, we need to make sure, and these are the 3 points that I kind of got out of it, that we need to make sure we're communicating these learning targets with students. We need to make sure that the students have student ownership, and we need to make sure that that we're assessing students. So I'm going to talk about those 3 things in the next few slides. So first of all, student ownership. There's some different ways that we get the student ownership where the students know that learning target. And one of the ways is whole brain teaching. And some of you guys started doing this last year, and I really haven't seen that much this year. And so I'm going to show a very quick 30-second video of the whole brain teaching so that you guys can kind of know what I'm talking about. I know Miss Gendro did this a lot last year, and I've seen a little bit of her doing it this year. And I've seen a couple second grade teachers doing it this year.
class? Yes. My sweet class? My sweet.
Whoops.
Yes. Let's go over our learning target for today. Mirror words. Mirror words. I can describe. The characters. In the story. And how their actions. Affect. The story. Mirrors off. When I tell you to, you're going to turn to your neighbor and teach them the learning target for today. Teach.
So, it's pretty simple, and what the whole brain teaching is you just have motions and animation to whatever the learning target is. Those of you who have used it, do you have any pointers on how to use it? And some people love it, some people
Just to
hate
get
it.
us settled, I'm going to just share a couple pages from a book that has something to do with our writing targets today. Our writing targets.
Sorry. Anybody have any pointers on using whole brain teaching or anything on making it student ownership?
You got to break it down because I use that a lot with my students this year too. We've done that a lot. So you got to break it down for them to have the movements. So once we break it down, I do it about 2 or 3 times and they repeat it. And like the third time, I just do the motions and they tell me all the words.
Okay.
I always repeat it with the same movement so that they get it, and I always make sure the exact same every time, because if I switch it up, then they start to, get confused. So it's always the same.
And Sierra, I've seen you use it and you do a great job with it. And you're right, you have to use the same motions each time, and the kids love doing it. And they get it. They understand the standard or the target whenever you do it. So, yeah. Anybody else have any other pointers? Okay, but I just wanted to show that just as a reminder, that is something you can do. If you're not comfortable with doing it, that's fine. But the key is making sure that students have ownership. And then the other part on the ownership is making sure they understand the vocabulary. And this is what I was talking about earlier of, circling some key words in the target and then explaining those key words in that learning target. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Can you guys see that still? I made it bigger. Okay. Where you're circling the word, main means most important, purpose means reason, text means the story, and so on. So you're circling those words and explaining to the kids what those mean, where it's not just words up on that anchor chart. I'm not seeing a lot of that this year. So this is a reminder that we need to see a little bit more of that. So I'm going to move on to the next thing on assessment. How are you guys assessing that success criteria? We talked a little bit about this in the beginning during the video. What are some ways that you guys are assessing the success criteria?
Using whiteboards for them to show or answer a quick exit ticket.
Okay, so using whiteboards. And I'm glad Ms. Boge said that because she's on e-learning. So even e-learning students or teachers can do that. And so campus teachers and e-learning teachers can use that. What else?
Index cards.
Yeah.
Index cards, so turning in the exit tickets on index cards. Perfect.
Sometimes I'll have the kids do a quick smiley face, straight face, or sad face on the back of the index card, so they don't have to say to the class that they don't understand it. And then I can look at who feels they get it, who feels they don't, who needs a little bit of extra support.
Perfect. Okay. So something as simple as a smiley face, straight face, sad face. You want to do it very quickly.
On e-learning, I'm using the post-it notes like Miss Jen or like Miss Glasgow did with us. I use that with some of my kids in my group. And I've also used where they just type their answer in the chat room, since it's private to me and no one else sees it. And then I just check off a list that I have on my end. And then that tells me right away whether they have it or not. So
That's awesome. I never thought about using the chat room, but that's a great idea. Okay, and that's second grade using the chat room. Very good. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Either a summary or a graphic organizer.
Okay, graphic organizer. And what was the first thing you said?
A summary.
A summary. Okay. And we don't use summaries enough. I think we should use summaries a lot more than we do, especially in science and math. We need to use summaries a lot more. So I think that's a great idea. Okay, so here's some ways, and we already mentioned the smiley faces. I mentioned earlier the thumbs up, thumbs down. Weather report, sunny or cloudy. Sunny, I'm clear, I got it. Cloudy, I'm unclear. So, I thought that was a cute idea. A 60-second think, plan for 60-second thinking time at the key points in the lesson, and then allow students to stop and think about how their learning is going at that moment. So that's stopping in the middle of the lesson and, okay, let's think for 60 seconds, and then how are you doing? All right, now thumbs up, thumbs down, some sideways. What are you thinking, and are you getting it? At the end of the lesson, then these are some ways that you can do a summary. 3 things I've learned, 2 questions I've got, 1 insight I've had. You can do a circle map or a mind map, a 60-second write. I like the ice cream bowl. Empty, no criteria, 1 scoop, some criteria, 2 scoops, all criteria, topping, additional criteria. So that's like a rubric of how you would grade, or of how whether they've got the success criteria or not. And there's some other ideas. Rubrics. I don't see rubrics enough. We need to have more rubrics around the success criteria. The SWOT analysis is another way that you could do a rubric, or have the kids self-assess whether they understand something. A feedback ladder is where the students read and listen to questions. It's just steps to them giving feedback on whether they're giving feedback on whether they understand something. So they're reading and listening to the question, then they're identifying their own strengths, they're highlighting the areas that they need to work on, and they're suggesting their own improvements. And then don't forget the power of the one-on-one meetings and the small group meetings to determine those areas of improvement. Okay, so what are our expectations of you? So this is the rubric from the teacher evaluation. So the rubric on 2A, communicating with students, from teacher evaluation, says that we need to make sure that we're communicating with students throughout the entire lesson. And we're communicating that what the students will be able to know and be able to do. And we're referring to the lesson objective at key points throughout the lesson. Okay, so this is the highly effective rubric on EPC 2A. All right, so what are we looking for? So these are the things that Ms. Reneska and I are looking for. We are looking for that learning targets and success criteria are posted in a kid-friendly language in the classroom. We are looking for learning targets and success criteria being used with students throughout the lesson. We are looking that students are taking ownership of these learning targets and success criteria. We are looking that they're being assessed. And we want to see checks for understanding, including the self-assessment. And then once you assess, that you're pulling groups based on that data. Questions on that?
How would you evaluate that with e-learning teachers, especially like the post-it ones? Because like I do it at the beginning of the week where they write it in their agenda quickly and we go over it and we'll visit it every day. But
That's a very good question. What we look for in e-learning teachers is for the learning targets and success criteria being posted. Some of you guys post it like in your Schoology. Some of you guys post it on your PowerPoint slides. Some of you guys actually talk about it at the beginning of your lesson, or you'll refer to, today we're learning about, things like that. Or as long as the kids kind of take ownership of what they're learning, it's okay. Does that make sense? Okay.
If I could add too, you guys do it, many even e-learning teachers do it naturally throughout. You guys, like Bo said, show me your thumbs up if you got it, quick whiteboard check. That's still referring back to the target because you're monitoring their mastery throughout.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to start wrapping it up. All right, so today's success criteria for this PD today, we defined the learning target. We did that in the beginning. We defined the success criteria. We talked about the purpose of the learning targets and success criteria. We know how to learn, how to use the learning targets and use success criteria in the classroom. So you have an exit ticket today. And on the exit tickets, there's gonna be 3 questions. The first question is, what's your name? So that's gonna be easy to answer. The second question, and let me kind of exit out of this. The second question, let me go to the actual, there it is going to ask you to rate yourself. So this is your self-assessment, whether you've met the learning target for today. And the learning target, remember, is know how to use learning targets and success criteria in the classroom. And then the third question is going to be more of an open-ended question. It's going to tell us which of the following success criteria you have mastered and how do you know. So that's why I wanted to make sure you saw the success criteria again. So ask yourself whether you have mastered these success criteria. And if you haven't mastered these success criteria, it's okay. And so think about, if you haven't mastered them, which ones you need to work on, and you're going to explain which ones you still need to work on. So which ones have you mastered and how do you know you've mastered them? So I've already put the exit ticket in the chat. So the link to the exit ticket is in the chat. And so you'll need to go to that chat and answer, click on that link and make sure that you answer that exit ticket. Just remember, just start where you are, use what you have and do what you can. We know that everybody's at a different place. then it's
Miss-
okay. If you had a
Ms.
different
Conley,
place.
I don't see the link in the chat. Can you send
Did it like go bye-bye?
Only Mrs. Gendro has something posted in chat.
Yeah, it's not there.
It went bye-bye? I posted it at the beginning.
There's only
If
one
you
thing in the
posted it
chat. and it's
before
Gendro.
everybody joined, they wouldn't be able to see it.
Okay. All righty, I'll put it there again. There it
Now
is.
it's there. It's there now.
You
Okay.
did post it at 8:25, but a lot of people weren't in yet.
All right, there it is again.
Thank you.
All right, so you can click on that link for the exit ticket. Does anybody have any questions while people are clicking on that link?
Do we need to complete this before you end the meeting?
Well, you might want to click on the link before I end the meeting so that you have that link, so you get credit for being here, because that's also your sign-in. That's how you get credit for being here today.
I clicked that. I didn't know if it would go away when you end the meeting.
The link will probably go away when I end the meeting.
The link's already opened, but I didn't know if it's.
The link, if it's already opened, it won't go away, but the chat will go away.
Okay, that's what I meant. Okay, thanks.
So has everybody clicked on the link?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I sent the email on Friday. You guys just make sure you work somehow today, whether you're working from home, whether you're working from school. Make sure you get grades done. Make sure you accomplish whatever you need to accomplish with lesson plans and all that good stuff. And just be productive. Miss Renesca or anybody else, do you have any announcements for the good of the group?
Fourth and fifth grade teachers, remember you guys have your writing assessment for your students on Friday. If you haven't given it in person yet, I'm going to send that reminder out to you. Also, we do have our science quarterly coming up, and I'm going to also send that reminder out and that schedule out for campus teachers and e-learning teachers about when that's going to be. So just a reminder on that.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your conversation today, and I appreciate everybody for everything you do. You guys are awesome. Like I said at the beginning, I missed you guys over the break.
Miss you too.
And I will see you guys around, and have a very productive and a great day.
You too. You too. Thanks.
Have a good
Thanks, you
one.
too. Happy New Year.
Have a good day.
Happy New Year. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.